Hi, and welcome to Supporting Individuals with Limited Verbal Ability. My name is Emily Orr, and I work at Reach for Resources in Minnesota. Reach is a nonprofit, and we support people with disabilities and mental illness to reach their full potential. Just a quick introduction about me before we get started today. I'm the Director of Adaptive Recreation and Inclusion at Reach. So we plan adaptive programs for adults and kids with disabilities, and then we also provide inclusion supports so that kids and adults can participate alongside their typical peers in parks and recreation settings. Today I'm talking about supporting people with limited verbal skills, and most of my experience in this area came from my internship in grad school, where I worked in an autism day treatment classroom with kids ages 4 to 6, and most of the kids were nonverbal or had pretty limited verbal skills in terms of communication and used pictures or signs or other ways to communicate. So some of my lessons and stories will be from that, and let's get started. Oh, I guess I should explain. I've been in the field since about 2006, and I always like to feature my cousin Andy in a photo. She's part of the reason that I'm in the field here, and just a cousin about 1 month younger than me, and we grew up basically like sisters in the same household a lot of the time, and we're very close. So just gave me a passion for working with people like her. Whoops, wrong way. Okay, here we go. Learning objectives. We're going to learn what choice boards are and visual schedules and how to create them yourself. Some basic signs that can assist with communication, and discuss some other program facilitation tips. So why are we talking about this today? Well, almost 8%, so that's 1 in 12 kids in the US ages 3 to 17 have a communication disorder. And that's a citation from the CDC from a 2012 study. And that's 8% at any given time. So it's a fairly common thing that we're seeing in kids. They break it down here based on if it's any communication disorder. It's 7.5%, so nearly 8. 5% of those are speech problems, so getting words out. 3% of those are language problems, so understanding language. 1.4% is voice problems, and less than 1% is swallowing problems, which is listed under communication disorders. So this is just to let you know that this is a prevalent issue, and that's why we're talking about it today. One thing I wanted to clear up before I start using these words are receptive and expressive language. So receptive language is how a person understands language. So when you hear it and take it in and make sense of what others are saying, that's your receptive language. And expressive language is how you use language yourself to express your thoughts and desires. So a child could have fairly good receptive communication, understanding what you're telling them without being able to express themselves very well, or vice versa. So just wanted to bring those terms up before I start using them and confusing people. So also the reason that we're here today is because when you have communication barriers, you will see an increase in behavioral challenges and challenges in meeting your goals and challenges in integrating with peers and understanding content and making progress and building rapport. So all kinds of different barriers that you might get into when you're not able to communicate 2 ways with a child, if they're not understanding what you're saying or you're not understanding what they want. So a lot of the techniques that I'm going to talk about today use PECS, and that's Picture Exchange Communication System. And this is a system that's typically taught by speech and language pathologists, which I am not, but I did work closely with a speech and language pathologist with implementing some of these things. And I think that some of them could still be implemented even if you're not a speech language pathologist. Obviously, you probably have different goals. You're not necessarily working on getting those words out, but it's still a good way of communication. So PECS was developed in the USA in 1985 by Andy Bondy and Lori Frost, and it uses prompting and reinforcement strategies that help to lead to independent communication. And the protocol uses systemic error correction procedures to promote learning if an error occurs. So it is a somewhat complex procedure, and they do offer trainings on it. So if after today you think maybe this is something that would be great for a lot of people you work with and you'll use it a lot, maybe you could look into what that training costs or what it is and what you'd learn in there. And if you have to be a speech language pathologist to attend, I'm not exactly sure. So let's talk about using choice. Using choice, I think, you know, kids not having control over their life or their day in any way does really impact their mood, and being nonverbal and not being able to express your desires, so not being able to get what you want very often would be very frustrating, if you can imagine. So let's think about using choice with all kids. But here's how you can use it with kids who have limited verbal skills, or, you know, or adults too. So anybody who isn't able to really express themselves, you don't need expensive technology to do this. Anybody can create these using some paper and Velcro and laminating paper. That's all you need to create these tools. So the first example is from a music class. So this is saying I want, and then they have some pictures of options that they can choose. So they can choose the guitar, they could choose to sing Wheels on the Bus, they could choose to play a drum, a tambourine, a piano. As you can see, there's different songs. So they could probably choose a song and an instrument. And so they could either hand those to you or point to them, or ideally move them from that Velcro strip up to the top Velcro strip. But that's something that you'll have to obviously work on with the kids. They won't just know to do that. You'll have to model that a little bit. So if the child like points to, I want to do Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, then you could move the Velcro up to the next one. And maybe do some hand-over-hand assistance with that eventually once they get comfortable. Kids learn really fast. Even if they're nonverbal, they learn these things really quickly and just really catch on. So, you know, as soon as they see you doing that the first time, if it's something they're motivated to do, they'll probably initiate that too, or a similar action. Okay, the second photo is just kind of a choice time. It looks like some outdoor toys. So you could prepare, you know, obviously you don't want to put things on there that you don't have. So you'll be making these based on your own equipment and what you want to work on for that day or what you have available. Also with kids, when they're first learning this, you probably only want to start with 2 or 3 choices instead of 6 or 8 or 12, and move up to more choices. The more comfortable they get, the more comfortable they get with the photos. And real photos are awesome. You know, this little picture of the spider, that's, you know, I guess that's fairly obvious, but some kids are more literal. So having an actual picture of a spider could be good too. So just a couple of thoughts on how to create your own. And so then the final one is during a craft project. And so it's saying, I want yellow crayons. So they got to choose between 4 colors, and they chose yellow. And then they got to choose between blocks, clay, or crayons, and they chose crayons. So just giving the child or person some choice in what they're going to be working on, and giving them an easy way to communicate that. Working on requesting. So during activities and snacks, pictures can be provided so that the person can request an item. Similar to what we were just looking at over here. It's very similar, just another example. The child obviously will have to be taught to indicate the photo they want. And this example is, I want more water, fruit, or snacks. And so what we used to do is have just like a large book of photos available, and then we'd see what the children would bring for snack, and then those are the only choices that they would have on their choice board. And then they could hand you, you know, a picture of the water or put it on their choice board. And then you'd respond by saying, I want more water, or this child wants more water, you know, use their name. And yeah, so once you know, get prepared, and the book of items is constantly evolving. So you want to get a picture that's close to what they have, but you could be surprised one day by something somebody brings, and then just, you know, improvise or get just help them know, like, this is how you request this item, show them the picture and point to the item, so that they know that that's what that is. You'll have to print off new items as you go too. So if they start bringing an item more than once, then you can prepare the picture so you're ready for the next time. Other ideas to use request boards. We looked at a couple other ones on the music and the crafts. So using colors is great. If somebody is escalated, maybe you could have a board with some calming choices like blowing bubbles, going to a quiet room, going to a bean bag, whatever your calming choices are for your space. Some reward choices. So let's say they're working up towards a goal and you have, you know, a picture of a starburst and a picture of a sticker, and they can pick one of the two reward choices. An exercise choice, so if they want to do the gym or go to the playground. And I'm sure, you know, my experience is all from the Autism Day Treatment classroom, so kind of limited to that scope, but just think about for your program and what kind of pictures you could use. You could even take pictures of your own staff and put them on there, other pictures of other kids that are in the classroom, pictures of the actual spaces in your area. That could really help kids to, so that it's not abstract, you know, it just looks just like the playground that they would be going to, not just an abstract playground. And eventually, like I said, you'd start off with 2 or 3 choices, and eventually, after a lot of practice, kids can work up to these request books. And so they're basically little 3-ring binders with plastic pages and lots of Velcro. And there will be pictures on every single page. You could flip through them. They can take a picture from any page and move it up to the top to communicate things that they want to do. So in my classroom, we only had one kid who was at that level, who could identify that many pictures and look through and communicate with us on that big of a scale. So that's a little bit more advanced, but really helpful to get your point across. And if they can look for any pictures, it's probably good to have them organized in some way, but you will see. Also, I love these help and break stickers. Those are awesome. So if they need help, they could learn the sign for help, but if they don't know the sign for help and they can use that picture, that's another way for them to ask. If they need a break, they're overwhelmed or overstimulated, then that's another great way for them to communicate that without, so you're kind of acting proactively and avoiding a meltdown because you know that they need a break. First of all, they need to be able to identify that, to ask for that. But if you can get to that place, that's wonderful. Okay, moving on to visual schedules now. So visual schedules are helpful for kids with and without disabilities, especially young kids. Pretty much every preschool I go to, whether it's typical or not, uses a visual schedule, and even good for younger grades as well. They're easy to change from day to day, so a lot of times things like circle time and play time and snack time will be pretty consistent, but other things might be different. So skill time might look different. Some days you might have art, some days you might have music, some days you might have gym. So to be able to kind of rotate those, if you're going to be going outside or something like that, just so kids can follow along and know what to expect for the day. Each kid could have their own if that's helpful. So in our room, each kid did have their own, and they would move their self, the picture of themselves, to the next item. So we'd kind of plan out the day, and then we'd say, okay, check your schedule. And then they'd go and they'd grab the next picture and move it to the next part of the room. The schedules can be big or small. It could be something that you have in your pocket for a quick reference if somebody needs that reminder, or it can be hung up on the wall and they could go check their schedule like we had our kids do. Whatever's going to work for your program. Interactive is good but not required. So it looks like this example, they use kind of, you know, a class or a group of people. So they probably only have one for the whole class is what I would guess. But it does look like they move it along. So I like that. You can use Velcro, or there's some of those like canvas boards with plastic pockets where you could put pictures in the pockets and then move things around. So whatever is going to be a good fit for your program, but it's great to have an interactive one, especially for younger kids. For older kids, sometimes you can even take away the pictures and just use words, and so those could be really easy to have on an index card or just something quick to reference once kids can read and things like that. But let's see, anything else about the visual schedules? I think that's about it. All right, so next we're moving on to step-by-step instructions. And I'm sure many of you have seen these washing hands boards. They put them in typical bathrooms all over the place. So it's an example that people are familiar with. Something good to just teaching kids these skills without having to use the words and without having to prompt them every time. They can just, you know, you can hang this up by the sink and they can just refer to it. And maybe if they miss the step, you could just point to the step or something like that. So you're not using words to verbally prompt them all the time. So just make sure that when you're breaking things down step by step, you really do small steps. Put photos of each thing, and yeah, that's about it. I think, you know, the first few times maybe point it out each when they're going through it, and then when they get more comfortable, then you could move on to the kind of point prompting. Here are some other examples that were done by the aquatics department in Brooklyn Park here in Minnesota. They have a really great adaptive swim program, and they had these made. I think they're excellent. Swimming in the pool can be really hard for some kids with disabilities, and some of the things are really hard to explain or see the way that you're, you know, when you're already in the pool, it's hard to see your instructor showing you monkey airplane soldier. So seeing the aerial view would make a lot of sense to some kids. Some kids have a hard time even getting in the pool. So working on just getting in the pool could be a whole lesson. So showing them the pictures of what to expect and kind of also modeling it too when you're there. So show them the pictures, and then you could say like my turn, and then show them what, you know, what the pictures are showing, and then see if they would do it for their turn as well. These are something that you can make. Obviously the city just used their own staff and took pictures and then wrote the words. They're really simple to make. Just, you know, take the pictures, do a little editing, and print them out. So you can do this for any type of thing that you're trying to teach. So how to make all these schedules and choice boards that we're talking about today. The first step will be to find pictures, and there are free pictures available. A lot of them are these cartoon pictures. They work for a lot of kids. If you have a more literal kid, feel free to take your own photos. You can do a mixture of cartoons and real photos. It shouldn't really matter, but if a picture's not working for a kid, you can always look for a different picture. So then you'll probably make like a whole page of photos like this, and then print them out, laminate them, put Velcro on them, and then then you'll need to laminate the board or schedule too and add Velcro there, the opposite Velcro, so that it can stick. You'll want to keep an organized 3-ring binder of all the picture options. So the picture options could be, you know, like an activity section, a time section, animal section, food section, you know, whatever items you have, just break them down in what makes sense to you. And really, that's it. That's all you need to do. If your schedule doesn't change at all, you could just put it all on there and laminate that, and just have them point, and that should do it. And let's talk for a second about assistive technology. So there is a ton of stuff out there, and I'm not going to go over every option possible, and getting these can be expensive or free, just depends on where you're at with what you need. Some kids might come with their own technology, like this Dynavox here. A lot of the kids in the Autism Day Treatment Program, if they're old enough or have been in the program, they might already have that, and they might have a waiver that would pay for some technology like that. I know that Dynavoxes in particular are pretty expensive, but they're built for, you know, what you need. Basically the picture exchange system, they'll just point to the picture and then it will read out what it says, and so then they can show another person, or another person can hear kind of what the picture is saying. They can like build sentences and everything. So that takes a while, and something that kids might work with a speech and language pathologist on too. So if you could talk to their interdisciplinary team or talk to their parents to see if they have any speech therapy, if they have any tools like that that they could bring to program. The other assistive technology down in the bottom right corner is the eye gaze tracking. So that's for people. So the Dynavox is more for kids who can use their fingers and point to things, and the eye gaze tracking would be more for people who have a physical disability and are unable to use their hand in a consistent way. So I had a cousin who had cerebral palsy that used eye gaze tracking to communicate, and it helped him sustain employment. It helped him manage his social media pages. It helped him communicate with family at gatherings. It helped him communicate with his friends in general. So really, it's pretty amazing. He basically just would look at the letter that he wanted to spell a word, and then eventually when his sentence was ready, then he could look at the, you know, read button or send button, and it would read it out or type it out for him. So it's pretty amazing. Also not cheap, I'm sure, but a good investment for quality of life. And some of these technologies, if you need to get it for your program, you might be able to find some funding via grants or something like that. I don't have any off the top of my head, but it's definitely something I think you could probably get funded if you're a nonprofit, that would help your program and help individuals. So I found another an app. This one was $15.99, and it's basically if a person can type out the words that they're thinking. So the Dynavox is just pictures, but if they're onto spelling, then they could just type out the words, and then the Say It would read it for them. So if it's really just like you know, getting the words out is the hard part, but they're really good at you know, typing words or spelling and can do that, then there's a cheap way. I mean, you need a tablet or a phone or something like that to use that on. And then Live Transcribe is one that has real-time speech to text. So just like any closed captioning, it would be reading exactly what you're saying as you're reading or talking. So it actually works pretty well, and it's really great for hearing impaired individuals, but individuals also who might need some more time to process information, it could be helpful for them too. And that's a free app, so anybody could get that and try it out and see if it works for them. Sign language is a super helpful tool. So a lot of the visuals we've been talking about are great, but sometimes you need to communicate about something that you don't have paper right by you. And some basic sign language can be really helpful for those situations. So Sign Tribe on YouTube has some really good videos of basic signs, and you know, working with this type of population, at least that I'm considering, you don't need to know the whole alphabet. You know, that might be a different type of skill level. Maybe for somebody you work with, that would be the fit. But for the kids that I was working with, it was really just some basic signs and to help communicate what we wanted and help them to communicate to us what they wanted to. And you can always Google other signs as needed. So if you're trying to communicate something different or out of the ordinary or something that the kid's interested in, you could always look up how to do that sign. So a few of the signs, I do have a video to share actually from Sign Tribe, but a couple of the signs that I used to use a lot that they didn't include are the sit sign, so asking kids to sit down. So you can just tap your hands like this and just say sit down. And eventually, once they know what the sign means, then you can do it without using the words. And so sometimes, you know, kids who have limited verbal skills, not using so many words is really the right way to communicate with them. It can become some noise, you know, if there's too much going on, too much auditory input. So just doing the sign sometimes is great, and also gives you a little bit of a break too. And then also stand up. It's just like this. Stand up. So sit down, stand up, and then stop. So one I used a lot. So somebody be running down the hall and just get in front of them and go, stop, not safe. So those are some common ones. Another one that I don't think she goes over is my turn. And that's one that I used all the time. And then you could help kids sign it on their own as well, so that they can communicate that they want to turn rather than just grabbing something from somebody else, causing another upset child or upset situation. So let's watch the video now from Sign Tribe and learn a few other signs from the experts here.
In this video, I wanted to show you some useful or functional signs that you can use with students or your children who have autism or are nonverbal or have difficulties communicating in general.
Also good for any kid. I just wanted to pause and say that I use them with my typical child, and sometimes it's just a good reminder.
These are some good functional signs that you can teach them so that they can communicate wants and needs. So they're going to be 10 words. Hungry. So make a C, put it on your chest, and go down. Hungry. Hungry. Hurt. Have your two pointer fingers out and then touch them together. Hurt. Hurt. Eat. Have your hands closed together and then point to your mouth. Eat. Eat. Drink. Make a C and pretend like you're drinking from a cup Put it to your lip. Drink. Drink. More. Your hands are going to be closed in the and shape, your fingers touching each other, and then touch them together. More. More. Tired. You're going to have your hands bent, your fingertips touching your, like kind of where your armpits are, your chest right around here, and then pull them down. Tired.
Yeah, practice along with them.
Tired. Tired. Yes. Make a fist and turn your wrist up and down. Yes. No, or no. You're going to have a closed 3, and then your thumb will touch your fingertips. No. Notice I'm shaking, shaking my head, and my eyebrows might go up and down. No. Finished or all done? Have your hands in 5 positions, back of your hands facing whoever you're talking to, and then twist your wrist. Finished or all done. And the last one is bathroom. Make a T and then wave your hand back and forth. Bathroom. Bathroom. All right, so those are the 10 functional signs that you might want to teach your child or your students to help them to be able to communicate basic wants and needs.
All right, so like I said, you don't need to know all of sign language to be successful here with your kids or adults that you're working with, but any signs that you can learn, that they can also learn, will help with communication in wants and needs. Sorry about that. Here we go. Okay, so we are just about done here, but I just wanted to cover a couple more facilitation tips that could be helpful to you. So number 1 is use fewer words. When I was working in the autism day treatment classroom with mostly nonverbal kids, I did not say many things. Use fewer words and keep it simple. Don't just repeat yourself over and over. Give them time to think about it. So sometimes I would be recording a session since it was for school, and then there would be long periods of silence where I would have to describe what I was doing because I wasn't trying to use words or talk at these kids who couldn't really speak back to me. So I would use pictures. It's okay to say the picture and the word like, oh, you want a snack, or whatever it is, but just keeping it simple. Using first then statements to explain instead of saying no to something, or instead of trying to explain things too much, you could just say, first we'll do circle, then we'll do snack. First circle, then snack. Sometimes you can just use the words, but this visual could be really helpful too. So first circle, then snack. I don't think this visual was one that we used very often, but if a kid is getting really stuck on something, for example, I had a kiddo who sometimes wouldn't want to wear his shoes or wouldn't want to wear his jacket. So to get him to get dressed and get moving, we would use a first then visual like this and say, first shoes on, then outside. So let him know, like, there is a reward for getting your shoes on, and that's where we're headed. It'll be fun, but you need to have your shoes on first for safety and then go there. So if they really enjoy the playground, something like that could be helpful. Using visual countdowns, super helpful. So this 3, 2, 1 is similar to something we always used. So we'd count down, and when there was 3 minutes left, you just take the 3 off, show everyone, and say 3 more minutes, 3 more minutes, and then put the 3 down. And then when you decided there was 2 minutes left, it doesn't have to be exact minutes, but when you decided to do the next morning, you take the 2 off, 2 more minutes, 2 more minutes, And then 1 more minute. And then the last picture, this one is break. So you could change it to whatever. Usually we would have it as clean up or all done. But whatever you're counting down to is fine to change that photo. But we use countdowns like that all the time. And countdowns are helpful for kids with and without disabilities. Using nonverbal cues and signs. So those are, you know, kind of one and the same. It could be a sign or just a nonverbal cue, like be quiet, instead of saying like be quiet, be quiet, be quiet, just nonverbal cue. Using a sign like stand up or sit down. Using music and songs, especially for routine, like the cleanup song. There's a reason there are so many cleanup songs out there and that they're so popular. It's because it cues kids into knowing what is coming next, and they like the music. So if you're having a hard day or a hard moment, you could just bring in some music to try to calm people down. You know, it could be calming music, it could be dancing music, it could be Wheels on the Bus. You know, you'll probably know your kids and what their favorite things are to be motivating or to help bring the group back. Encourage steps towards engagement. So if kids are, you know, pointing at pictures or starting to hand you the pictures, just kind of praising them for making the right step, or I like how you pointed at that one. Now I know what you need. That will help them to learn the right thing. Giving time. Sometimes kids with lower verbal skills or kids in general just need a moment to think about what you said instead of just saying the direction over and over. So just give them a minute or two, and sometimes it's longer than it feels longer than it really is. So just give them time and be patient. Couple references I have for you today. The YouTube link is obviously the video that we watched. And I know this is not a live session, but if you do have any questions about a kid that you're working with or a certain scenario or something I talked about today, my contact info is here, and I'm really happy to chat with you about it and help you come up with some strategies that might help. So thank you so much for joining me on this session today, and enjoy the rest of the conference. And good luck, and thanks for helping all the kids that you are working with, whether they have lots of verbal skills or not so many.